Hey, welcome to our notes for example 3, where we're looking at equivalent forms of non-special angles on the unit circle. If we want to evaluate the secant of negative 155 degrees, first we want to find a positive coterminal angle for negative 155. So we're going to add one revolution around the circle, which is 360 degrees. So 360 minus 155 is 205 degrees. And 205 degrees is in quadrant 3 between 180 and 270. And so we can write the secant of negative 155 degrees as equivalent to the secant of its coterminal angle, 205 degrees. Okay, then the closest x-axis is 180. So to find the reference angle, we'll take 205 minus 180. And that's going to give us the first quadrant reference angle right here. So 205 minus 180 is a 25 degree reference angle. And in quadrant 3, the secant is negative. All students take calculus. T is in quadrant 3. That's tangent, and it's reciprocal positive. Everything else is negative. So we know that our angle is negative in quadrant 3. So rewriting in terms of the sine and or cosine of the reference angle, since secant is the reciprocal of cosine and it's negative in quadrant 3, we'll have negative 1 over the cosine of 25 degrees. So to check that these are equivalent expressions, we're working in degrees, so we're going to go to the mode and switch from radians to degree mode. And then secant, there's no secant button on the calculator, so we have to use our reciprocal identity, 1 divided by the cosine of negative 155 degrees. Then we'll compare that to 1 divided by the cosine of 205 degrees, and those are equivalent. And we'll compare that to negative 1 divided by the cosine of the reference angle, 25 degrees, and all three of those expressions are equivalent. So rounding to 4 decimal places of accuracy, our answer would be negative 1.1034 because the fifth value is a 7. Okay, then in the next example, we want to evaluate the cosecant of 23 pi over 9. And if we double that denominator, 1 lap around the circle would be 18 pi over 9. So we're going to rotate clockwise 1 revolution, which will subtract 18 pi over 9 from 23 pi over 9. And 23 minus 18 is 5 pi over 9. If half of the circle is 9 pi over 9, then a quarter of the circle would be half of 9, or 4.5 pi over 9, which makes 5 pi over 9 a quadrant 2 angle. Okay, all students take calculus. Sine and its reciprocal cosecant are positive in quadrant 2. So we'll put a little reminder here that our angle is positive, or our answer rather is positive in quadrant 2. So the equivalent expression in terms of the coterminal angle would be the cosecant of 5 pi over 9. Then to find the reference angle, our closest x-axis is 9 pi over 9 minus our quadrant 2 angle of 5 pi over 9, which gives us a reference angle in quadrant 1 of 4 pi over 9. So we rewrite this expression in terms of the sine and or cosine of the reference angle as 1 over the sine of 4 pi over 9. And in the calculator, to check that those are equivalent, we'll need to go back into radian mode. And 1 divided by the sine of 23 pi over 9 is going to be compared to 1 divided by the sine of 5 pi over 9. And then we'll compare that to 1 divided by the sine of 4 pi over 9. Whoops. And notice we get the same decimal approximation for all of them. So rounding to 4 decimal places of accuracy is going to be 1.0154. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try evaluating the cotangent of -3 pi over 10 on your own, and then when you're ready to go over it, resume the video and we'll try this problem together. So you're starting at -23 pi over 10. If we double the denominator, that's 20 pi over 10, which would still be negative. So we need to do 2 laps around the circle in the counterclockwise direction by adding 40 pi over 10. -23 plus 40 is 17, and so our positive coterminal angle is 17 pi over 10. And our equivalent expression would be the cotangent of that coterminal angle, 17 pi over 10. Okay, that 17 pi over 10 is a quadrant 4 angle, and the cotangent is negative in quadrant 4. So in terms of the sine and or cosine of the reference angle, it's going to be a negative answer because of being in quadrant 4. Cotangent is cosine over sine, and then the reference angle is the closest x-axis, which was 20 pi over 10, minus our positive coterminal angle, 17 pi over 10, and 20 minus 17 is a 3 pi over 10 reference. So this equivalent expression in terms of sine and or cosine of the reference angle is negative cosine of 3 pi over 10 divided by the sine of 3 pi over 10 using that quotient identity. And in the calculator, we can see that all 3 of those expressions are equivalent, and their decimal approximation rounded to 4 decimal places is -0.7265.